Okay, so we are able to go off with it now. Wasim, once more, can you confirm my voice and my screen, Mr. BC, normally, clearly? Perfect, I thank you for that. So welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for having taken to afford the time to join our third session of the impact of ICTs and its kind of really our effect generally on the learning, on the education aspects in a general way. Today I'm going to be hosting the webinar. I'm going to be co-hosted also by Ibtisam Butbel. She's also my colleague working at the ELTA Virtual University. She's going to be presenting one part of the event with me. Once more, before we really kick off the webinar, I've got really a problem to make sure the management of Najat Dali. I kindly ask you once more to just keep yourself on mute because you're really distracting the webinar. At the same time, switch off your camera if that really was not intended to be open out there. In the case you don't mind, yes, leave it, but your mic should be off all the time. You've got an echo, you've got a problem. In the case it proceeds over this way, I'm going to be obliged to remove you from the webinar. Thank you very much. Perfect. So as I said, today's session is going to cover the impact of information and communication technology, generally known the ICT, on the students' learning and their achievements. As we all know that generally lots of researches, they reveal that ICTs can empower the teachers and the learners, and at the same time they can provide a very good and stable learning environment that helps to address different learning style, different learning methodologies to get really adapted to a certain level of the students' abilities, and at the same time to foster the development of the 21st century skills. In recently, some studies revealed that in order to support this information, in order to support these, if I may call them hypotheses, we really need to understand the real impact of ICTs over the student learning, over their engagement, over their achievement. So these three main points, and certainly these are the points through which our webinar is going to be drawing out today. But first of the things, before we tackle anything, we need to understand if we really have to prioritize pedagogy over ICT, or we have to prioritize ICT over pedagogy. Well, it's very sure that the ICTs are generally not and should never be considered as the focus of the teaching and the learning processes, generally talking. And at the same time, some models, they try to encourage kind of the infusion of the ICTs in the schools, in the methodologies that are being implemented, and at the same time also in the teacher's instruction and the students' learning. Whereas generally, or let's say in a very factual way, ICTs are just a way of supporting, are just a way of making the learning critical, making the learning very ethical, creative, motivating, and at the same time it really declenches the critical thinking trophy of the students, which means that after the review of similar studies, it revealed that the instructional ways or the instructional methodologies that the teachers and the people who are managing the ICTs are trying to deploy over the students or over the learning processes are a little bit confusing, are a little bit really not very stable, which means that the evidence shows that the teachers' pedagogies and the pedagogical learning, kind of the reasoning, influence their uses of ICTs, which means that we should all the time focus on prioritizing the pedagogy over the ICT, because ICT is just a way of coloring the ICTs. I'm sorry, the pedagogy is just a way of declenching the critical thinking and trying to make that learning or that pedagogy aspect a little bit creative, a little bit more developed in one term or in another term. At the same time, we get to ask also should ICT be seen as the focus of the learning process or not? So we need to understand whether it's really important to see the the ICT as the focus of the learning, so if it really goes over that or not. And as I've mentioned, when it comes to pedagogy, one of the ongoing challenges of technology, of ICT in education, is that recently the educational readers, or these technological advocates and organizations, they have been investigating on how the pedagogical components ladder to one to another. And they found out that there is a very limited number of pitfalls and types which really go through the learning process. So that is to summarize it, saying that ICTs are not the way, or are not the focus of the learning, but rather just a supportive and a critical and creative way and ethical thinking self-image of the learning of the students, and at the same time it applies for the teachers. Which means that ICTs should never be taken as the first methodology, or taken as the curriculum's channel or path to follow in terms of strategizing the work or the instructions or the content in our syllabus or in our curricula we are going to share with our students. And here it comes, these points I've mentioned before that we are going to discuss today, the achievement and the motivation. Despite all the facts, or despite all the two scientific researches, they were sum-ups of the scientific researches by the University of CTF in the USA. It's really important for us as teachers to understand the real impact of using ICTs as a coloring method to our syllabus or to our pedagogy on achievement and on motivation. We understand also that it's very important that we as teachers understand what are the scopes of achievement, what are the scopes of motivation, and how the motivation used to work before we tend to speak about ICTs, and how it is going to work after we speak about ICTs. When it comes to achievement, we're going to see the success rate. I mean, when I say the success rate, we talk about the learning, we talk about the skills acquisition, we talk about the 4 language skills, and so on, and their success rate against the new deployment of ICTs, how it used to be before and how it is while using ICTs. Whether it's going positively, whether it's improving, whether it is decreasing, it's not improving, it's stable. This really relies on every research, relies on really different aspects of the practicality that is going to be used in your teaching methods, or it's going to be used in your teaching surveys you are going to use in relation to your syllabus, in relation to your curriculum. As I've mentioned, computer-based teaching methods, they increase the students' performance when they increase the students' awareness. And in ICTs, they're going to get used to be enhancing the communication. So we find a very negative impact of practices requiring an active role of the students in the classes, which means that the impact, or let's say talking about the impact of communication or the impact of ICTs on achievement, relies on some standards or relies on some conditions. These conditions are that the ICTs, or this computer-based teaching, should work on increasing the performance. So before we get to achievement, we need to have the performance increased, and at the same time it raises the students' awareness. Later on, enhances their communication. So in the case these 3, let's say, conditions are not fulfilled, we cannot say that ICTs has got a very good, let's say, positive impact over the educational process, and this temple exactly is achievement. And the same applies for motivation. So ICT has the potential to enhance and transform the higher education. When I say higher education, it really does not go to university only, but all what gets over these over the new generations, let's say the 4th generation, the 5th generation. I know in some countries it's being called also the 2nd generation in many ways, and it's seen as a very important tool to enable and support the move from traditional teacher-centric teaching styles to more learning-centric styles. So this is also another condition if we want to say that there is an impact of ICTs over motivation. So but here it means that in the case you use ICTs, you need to make sure that you do not stay with the old-fashioned method that you're making your learning as a teacher-centric style, but it should be moving to learner-centric methods, to learning-centric styles. We're going to see the details all together in the upcoming slides. So this was just a general overview about what we're going to be discussing today, two main topics or two main points: achievement, motivation, and the impact of ICTs over the student learning, and these 2 points, achievements and motivation. So before I pass to the second slide, anyone has got questions while discussing these 4 main important points, please? Anyone's got a question or has got something to add, for example? Hello, what's your name? Hello, Samia Sally. Go ahead, please. What's your question?
It's not a question, but it's kind of command.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Sorry?
I said I would love to. Go ahead with it, please.
Yes. Because motivation, what I noticed with my student, the student, they like ICTs because it's a kind of change. Not like before, they use just the blackboard or the whiteboard as we have now, and things, pictures, something like that. But with ICT, something new, something with technology, something they can watch, they can see, they can talk sometimes. They can produce also their own projection, their own exposition. So I think it's very important if we take the kind of motivation that we have concerning students. So we can say that we, with the ICTs, we can be the, let's say, not perfect teacher, but a good teacher.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Thank you for this addition.
You're welcome.
Anyone else has got something to add? Hello?
Hello?
What's your name? Go ahead.
Mr. Faris Al-Fash.
Hello, Faris. Yes, please.
I'm a teacher at university. I teach in economic subject. Sorry, my English is not very well as other.
Don't worry about that. Don't mention it at all. So go ahead with it.
But I try to. What I want to mention about ICT, we can use in all majors and subjects, not also in English study, but in all field of science. As my experience, I am used to use this method in teaching. It's very helpful, and but I noticed that it's very motivation for students and very helpful and grateful. We can do or we can give more information and knowledge by this method. So it's very very important, and I hope all schools and universities try to put suitable equipment to use this technology or
Mm-hmm.
method. So it's according to my experience, it's very useful.
It's very useful, and as I've said in the introduction that there are just some conditions. We as teachers or we as advocates represent the educational institution in the country. Worldwide, talking about teachers, we should understand just how these deployments are going to impact the learning. But when we talk about education in a general way, we need also to understand what are the items we are referring to, and how do we configure education as a teacher or from a pedagogical perspective, and understanding how these deployments are going to impact the achievements, because this is an important aspect of the learning. We need to understand as teacher achievement and motivation, and they are intercomplementary. One completes the other, one supports the other, and they all support the learning, and the learning supports the education. So in the case we do not do similar researches, we do not understand this impact, whether positive, whether negative, we are going to fall sometimes into a confusion or a controversy with whatever method that is going to be deployed, with whatever instruction we are going to receive, in the way how we are going to use the ICTs with a certain syllabus, with a certain curriculum. Thank you for you. Thank you for Asma too, for these additions. Perfect. So here we goes now. I'm just going to hand over this slide to my colleague Ibtisam. You can go ahead, please, Ibtisam, with your comments, with your details and scraps of Davine, please.
Yes, Hicham, thank you. Hello, everyone. Let me please know if my voice is clear.
Very clear, and the screen share is clear too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's put apart the obstacles and implementation failure of ICTs in class, and focus more on the change brought by the use of ICT tools in class, in the ways teacher and learners view and practice teaching and learning. The change that results in a new model or a new paradigm based on new relations between learners, knowledge, and teachers, and which or the use of ICTs allows the shift from teacher-based approach to student-based approach. This shift, of course, is due to the groundswell of interest that both teachers of learners, especially the 21st century generation, give to the use of ICTs. Okay, that shift or that change could not happen without the effective use of ICTs that we have mentioned. We talked in our last webinar about using ICTs effectively and selectively. And of course, an appropriate use will lead to positive effects on learners' attitude toward the learning process and their achievement. Okay, let's mention some of these effects or positive impacts on student motivation and engagement. I can say that the use of ICTs is like a boomerang. It's about what you give, you get. So it contributes to the student's motivation for learning and engagement in learning. That means if you use ICTs effectively in your class, your learners will get motivated, and of course, if your learners are motivated, your lessons will go well. Maybe I can mention a small example that I have experienced in class using a simple tool, which is my phone. What I do is that I film my learners while they are role-playing conversation, for example, and I've noticed that filming them while they are role-playing the conversation and telling them that I'm going to show them their video later after they finish, made them getting motivated and want to do it better. So when they watch themselves, they say, okay, miss, let me do it again so that I can do it better. And what I have noticed also is that it motivated also other learners who were not used to participate in class, and they got engaged and want also to role play the conversation or to do the task which is a competition or for example. Okay, this is one of the impacts. I can talk about another point which is worth being mentioned, which is about the access to ICTs outside the classroom and which affects the learner's confidence and behavior. So what we can say about it, or what that most of teachers have experienced is that the learners who have already encountered and used ICTs outside the class tend to be more engaged and more confident than their mates who have never used ICT tools. Okay, maybe those who have never used ICT tools, they may misbehave in class, and they may start, for example, chatting or laughing, and some teachers get angry because of this, and they may give up on using ICTs in class, but this is not what is supposed to be done. The teacher should not give up and instead make of using ICTs a habit. Okay, the learners will laugh or chat once, twice, and thrice, but they are not going to misbehave the same way for the same reason the whole year. So the teacher should make of using ICTs a habit so that learners will get used to it, and this way it will increases or promotes the learner's autonomy. They will be behaving dependently. They are not going to rely on their mates, but they will be more independent in class. Okay. These were some of the impacts on the students' motivation and engagement. I don't know if you guys have want to mention other points or other positive points or positive impacts on student motivation and engagement. Please, if you have, feel free to mention that.
Right. Can I say something? I don't know. Ibtisam, is that fine?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Okay, just to capitalize what you've spoken about, you've got really to mention lots of nice examples, very realistic ones too. Just for the people and for the participants here to understand that the impact on the student motivation and the engagement also is related to also the way we teach, is related to the behavior management, is related to the teaching methodology, related to the communication, the collaboration the teacher establishes with his learners. It really does not go, because some learners, let's say 80% of the learners, they cannot just go through this process of starting to learn with ICTs without redirection, without instruction, without some explanation, without some, if I may call it, controlling or monitoring this process. And that's why it is mentioned here in the slide and comes to students prospecting, discovering and exploring. But we need to understand that these steps or these elements, they cannot be performed by students of, I don't know, of grade 4, students of grade 3, students of K11 or whatever. Particularly when we talk about new deployment, or let's say the first touches of ICT that are going to be established in a certain institution or in a certain school. I leave also for the participants, maybe you would like to add something else. Thank you.
Hello Hicham, hello Ibtisam. I hope you are fine.
Hello, what's your name, please? Hi, Sliman. I remember your voice. Okay, thank you. Carry on, Jamal. I got someone has got his or her mic open. That's why. We hear you, Jamal. Carry on, please. Thank you, Sliman. Really, you're absolutely right. And as you said, there is kind of a notion to be adopted. There is kind of a certain understanding we really need to get to fix, particularly as you said, when it comes to the learning. A learning process is not something that you are living outside in normal social life, but it's a whole chain. It's a whole it's a whole concept that needs lots of work, that needs lots of study, needs research to be done to understand how to get those students from an old mood to a new mood. So there is kind of a switch, there is kind of a transition of this learning process. And as you said, teaching new generation really requires new tools, requires new methods. When I say new methods, I'm not talking about the competency-based approach. I'm not talking about the TBL, about the CBL, or these, how to say, linguistic or didactics-related methods. But I'm talking about the methodology of how to establish a procedural learning, how to establish a knowledge base of a certain learning that is going to be adaptable, compatible to any ability in your classes. Thank you, Sliman, for your addition. Absolutely.
Okay, let me start. Anyone else? Yes, bro.
Hi, so I agree with a lot of what is just comment. I know with my students,
Oh, no. I thought you got a problem and I wanted to step out. But yes, carry on, please. Yes, it's clear. Got some wrapped cats over, but yes, it's clear for now. Yes, Ibtisam, if I might just jump in for a while. We are not talking about some kind of um, uh, business-related impact, let's say, in terms of deploying an ICT tool in the classes or the way the institutions they set their policies in independence to their conditions, independence to their budgets, independence to their resources and workforce. But these are just really things which could ameliorate, which could make better the achievement of the students. Certainly empowers the teaching and the learning processes altogether. Ibtisam has spoken about the location of ICTs, spoken about the engagement, the skill promotion, the effect of ICTs. Yes, this is not all. We've really got thousands and thousands of impacts and effects of the ICTs over the achievement of students. And here we mentioned kind of the most critical ones, the very frequently used ones. We all know, we all try most of the times to pay attention to. And we also need to understand that when we talk about impact, when we talk about the ICTs versus achievement or versus learning or versus teaching, we need to understand there is kind of a graph which is increasing. We cannot do similar work, we cannot do a similar deployment, as Brianna said, as Jamal, or I don't remember, Sliman said also, was talking about how the way we get really our students engaged is to avoid them getting bored, to avoid them getting misbehaving and things like. We cannot really afford to do those efforts, those deployments and all that work all so that we just do something and leave it as it is. It really needs to show there is an interest. It really needs to show there is an improvement. It needs also to show the way it connects the divisional access to the internet and its impact over the achievement, its impact over the success rate of our students. And all this really gives kind of a greater responsibility for the students to be a little bit autonomous in the way of their learning, to get a little bit independent, not really relying on the teacher to feed them, relying on the teachers to give them information, but at the same, it really gets it accessible using their own tools, their own mobile phones, computers, internet access, to get this information, also get to make their learning improved. If I may just add something really important, and I've really made sure that it is visible in the slides. I've noticed that there is kind of pedagogy. Yes, I've seen that the impact of ICT on student achievement is more positive when linked to pedagogy. I see also ICT impact is dependent upon the type of pedagogies used. All of this really, it does not mean that we are focusing just on pedagogy and not on ICT. We're giving kind of 100% focus on the pedagogy. It's absolutely not the case. But just for all of us to understand that we cannot tend to a similar change, to a similar transition without relating ICTs as a coloring method. I repeat it once more, as a protective, as an innovative method to improve that pedagogy we're using. Pedagogy really just covers everything, including the teaching methodologies related to the ICT, including these styles and these approaches we used to know before. And that's why it is said that there is a positive impact of the students' achievement when it comes to blended learning situations, when it comes to, let's say, certain deployment where it really attracts the students' attention, like kind of working with backgrounds, working with the colors, working with the kind of surfing the net, trying to discover something new. But also, we need to understand that there is a negative impact. Once more, there exists a negative impact. There exists something that ICTs does badly to the improvement of the learning, does kind of in a very tough way to the learning process. It really reducts it over, and it makes it sometimes non-improving, or it makes it stuck in a certain level. And this is what we are going to certainly talk maybe in the coming slides, but I just wanted really to mention that the major changes in the ways the teachers are going to teach and the learners are going to be receiving this processed information through the ICTs also needs a certain understanding, or needs a certain, if I may call it, fiber to go through, certain filter to go through, linking it to our really policy-related pedagogies, or the styles of pedagogy we are using. Back to you, please, Sam. Sorry for interruption. Right, that's okay for me. Let's see some of our guests, if someone would like to add something about the impact on the student achievement. Hello, go ahead. Yes, Bashir, we hear you. Go ahead, please. Thank you, Bashira. Thank you, Ibtisam, also. Najat, please, can you set yourself on mute, please? Kind of a horrible echo over here, distracting everything. Thank you once more. I just wanted to summarize what we've been discussing, what every one of you has added, really about the impact on the learning, on the achievement. Certainly there are, as I've mentioned, some negative effects of the ICT over the learning. We do not want to focus on the negative side. Certainly we need to understand it, we need to be aware of it, we need to understand that our still really research is on the way how these advocates or every institution which tries really to adopt the ICT use in its learning, trying to work on new procedural knowledge base, for example, on the way how to better establish or to better deploy these the ICT tools or for so that to be used in a very effective way and really faces the achievements and the learning for both the teacher and the learners. When it comes to the positive and the negative impact, as I've mentioned, we really need to understand it. And the potential impact of ICT on education seems to be limitless. We need to understand this. And in informal learning environments, and lots of educators, lots of teachers will embrace ICTs. They can create more engaging curricula, for example, for further capable and trying to get it adapted and personalized for every single individual learner. And at the same time, the teachers, they can deliver more aesthetically engaging lessons and content with diverse learners across vast distances. For example, to use these technological tools we are using at this very moment, like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, like Skype, and so on and so on. So through the use of these targeted data analytics and these tools, the teachers, they can assess the learner growth, they can see really their improvement, and this is the point where I really wanted to come, whether using all of what we've been talking about into the teaching is going to make this ICT very positive or very negative. This is not something we are not really centered to be the people to decide whether it is yes, but certainly our opinion counts. We are the teachers. We need to understand whether things really sorts out our needs, sorts out the abilities and the capabilities of our students. I've mentioned three positive, points, three negative points for each. When it comes to the positive one, talking about distance learning, this is an absolutely amazing opportunity for students, particularly talking about times like ours, like at this very moment, talking about this pandemic, and really things have changed, the life has changed, the learning, this human-based learning, human-based teaching has changed a little bit. So with the ICTs, really lots of things have gone another way, but really reached the same target. Talking about teaching, talking about learning. So teachers during these times, these very hard times, have not been able to come to school as students to teach them. So using the ICT was one of the means really to establish a certain communication, a very close communication between these two parties to carry on the learning process, to carry on this, to carry on the education. At the same time, the ability to perform impossible experiments by using simulations. And I guess that there is absolutely no other way for us teachers or learners to use some impossible experiments or this type of special expertise if we do not use the ICTs. Really, it gives us the chance, it gives the students the chance to stimulate lots of things, lots of games, lots of roles in the learning process. And at the same time, it gives the possibility for the students to have individual learning programs within the topic, rather than everybody. So using ICT really just going to make you able to serve every single ability you've got in classes. And this is one of, I remember when we talking about this back in February. It was our first webinar. We've spoken about mixed abilities, the way to manage them, the way to manage their learning. ICT is one of the best ways for you to feed your students individual needs, and you can really distribute up to 30 or to 40 tasks or up to 40, if I may call it, programs or individual learning tasks for your learners. This is absolutely amazing. At the same time, at the same place, even in distance, even in class, that really does not make a difference. When it comes now to the negative effect of, or the negative impact of ICTs over the learning and these upgraded system of education, sometimes it's a little bit hard to say that ICT is good for everyone. Yes, we can, let's say, for a certain percentage, yes, but ICT is not equal. Is not an equal opportunity for poor students and for poor schools, if I might call it that way. We've got some schools. We know lots of countries, not only one or two, they are still not able to afford that very huge budget to support and to sponsor these new deployments. Talking about these students who have got really access to the internet, got access to the ICTs, they're using their personal mobiles, their families, parents' mobiles. There are some other students who do not have this possibility. So this is one of the really negative things. I most of the times have been in country while doing my duties normally with students. That I see the difference between someone who's got access to the ICTs home and someone has not got access to the ICTs home. At the same time, students and teachers, they get hooked by the technology aspect rather than the subject content. We see that when it's talking about time management. I guess Bashira mentioned it some time ago. Using ICTs really hooks our attention, hooks our work maybe to another direction, just to focus on technology as an aspect, as a tool, as a new discovery, trying to make the learners really motivated. But we do not pay attention to the time we're losing because we just give a very, very limited amount of time to the subject content. This is something we mentioned in the first and the second webinar. The third thing is that the students, they feel lazy to attend the class if they can easily get the study material from the web. This is also one of the things, and it really depends on the policy of each institution. But yes, in case students would get the information, let's say the same information they're going to get from the teacher in, let's say, through their personal ICT use, it's going to be a little bit hard for them to try to kind of move from that very ready information you use to go into class and getting the information from the teacher. So it's going to create kind of laziness of the students' behavior, and this is one of the things we will be talking on the we're talking about on the next slide about how really we could make also the teachers in interfering in this using the ICTs outside of school. Go directly to it because we do not have enough time. Then it gets asked for a question. As I said, exploring, this is the point number 4, just to go to it directly, then explain the whole slide. Exploring ways in which it might be used to support the needs of students together with their teachers. So here, sometimes we also, in case we could establish a certain communication between parents, we need to make sure that we explain to the parents that we can give to the students certain tasks that could be done with their own ICTs, like for example letter recognition, word recognition, some reading or writing, reading comprehension, written expression, and things like this. So, and in this slide, we jump directly to the use of ICTs outside of the school and the way the students, they learn and they try to kind of get profound that in school using let's say trying to get the information really from a new way, from another perspective, without the aim, without the help of the instructor or the teacher. But we need to understand that this is a very good idea. This is a very good thing also for the learners and for the teacher, as it gives limitless information, that a constant connectivity to information, so that the learners, so that the teachers, they really get up to date in every single topic. This is a very good thing, and it helps also the students to get self-directed on their educational futures. Also, talking about self-direction here, there are really lots of websites. One of them, one of the most famous ones is the MOOC, actually the Massive Online Open Courses, which may allow also students overseas to connect to each other and engage in similar, let's say, learning, similar interests, similar topics they might be interested in. And also this, it does not apply only for teachers, does not apply only for, let's say, old students, but it applies really also for young learners. And also it really creates a confidence, it creates a kind of frequently type way of the students to get really trusting themselves, so that they do not really kind of leave the learning conditioned to go into school, leave the learning conditioned by a teacher. Learning is not conditioned by anything. Learning is open. Learning doesn't have a time, doesn't have a space, does not have a location. So the students who use a computer at home also use them in school more frequently and with more confidence. So it really helps them to build a certain confidence, and really improves their results, improves their practicality when in class with the teacher. So they're going to facilitate, to simplify the way for the teacher to manage and control their lesson. And here we go to an important point once more. Let's say by the end here, the learning types. So the different types of learning which take place at school than at home. It's not a good idea sometimes to try to replicate classroom at home, which means that sometimes the students, they try to take everything, they try to take the content of the lesson that's been taught at class, and they try to redo it once more at home using their own personal ICT means. This is not very advised. It happens, we understand, but also the teachers need to intervene in certain cases. I've heard really several examples in the two previous webinars. Some of you have given information how the teacher also can distribute some ICT related tasks to keep the students avoiding, let's say, or form trying to imitate the lesson that's been done in class. So students, for example, with dyslexia, they can sometimes feel very stressed and overwhelmed to have done the same thing at class and to be doing the same thing at home. So really giving assignments, giving pieces of homework to students with different content, with really motivating concepts and procedural solutions is going to increase the learning phase for them, and also it makes it really motivating and enjoyable. Anyone has got a question, please? Hello, what's your name? Hello, Sabrina, go ahead. I absolutely agree. It is important, and it's got kind of its special value. It's got its special concepts, its special conditions. But really, we as teachers need also to understand the way how it is used, the way how really we could combine it with the learning, we could combine it with the language skills, we could combine it with the success rate, with the engagement, with the motivation of our students. This is also important. Thank you so much, Sabrina. We are really approaching, so it's got over the time. If anyone has got something to add before we wrap up over the today's webinar, someone would like to add something? Hi, go ahead. Bashira, go ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, we 8 minutes above the already set time, so I would like to thank every one of you. But before we wrap up the webinar, I would like to remind you to write your names in the chat thread. This is the chat thread actually. I see some people have already been writing their names. I've been writing some notes and some questions over there. But please write your names in the chat button here in the chat thread so that we can write them on your certificates. This is one. In the case you cannot see the chat thread on your phone or in your PC, that's okay also to send us your email, or let's say your name and surname by email, in case you really cannot see that over here. Once more, for the people who attended the 3 sessions of ICTs, integration in teaching and learning, I would like to thank them so much, along with the new participants who joined only 1 or 2 sessions, for your time, for having taken the opportunity to make this level, to make this webinar happening. It's been really a great pleasure enjoying these 16 events we've been able to organize since the month of February. Hoping to meet you in our next series. Yes, thank you very much. For the people who are going to celebrate the feast tomorrow, Eid Mubarak, and hope to meet you soon. Thank you so much.